Greetings and welcome to a Grenfell MediaWatch update. Today's edition I want to call Memoirs of a Grenfish. Now I suppose like many of us, I've got mixed feelings as phase one of the public inquiry draws to a close. We've learned quite a lot of things. There's the heartbreaking revelations we picked up last week about the young daughter who cut off the phone to her mother because she didn't want to hear her scream when she realised that she wasn't going to get out in time. We also heard some useful stuff, and I think Inside Housing compiled a list of some of the topics and themes that have come from phase one of the inquiry. Now there's been a lot of coverage of the stay put policy, and I don't really want to go over it all over again, but over the last couple of weeks we've heard about the 999 operator who told a resident to stay put essentially because firefighters were on their way to save them. They weren't. We've also heard about the father who told his daughter in the same situation that, look, it's better to die trying than to stay inside there, when she told him that there was like smoke and fire coming through the door and she just couldn't escape. Now, one of the more technical submissions to the inquiry came from Professor Person. Now, he's a fire safety expert, and he kind of announced that if people had actually been evacuated before the fire, before the blaze took hold outside the building, then they could have been evacuated. Not a few of them, all of them. Now, he estimates, and I'll explain how he did his tests, it would have taken 7 minutes to get everyone out. There was this golden window of opportunity that was missed. Now, there are going to be some critics asking, how can he be sure that everyone would have got out in 7 minutes? So what Professor Purser did was conduct some tests. He went to the top of the tower himself, bearing in mind he's a 72-year-old man, and he timed how long it took to descend to the bottom of Grenfell. And he estimated it was just over 9 seconds per floor. And this is where he reached a total of 7 minutes. And this is like considering the fact that the place would have been rammed up with people and they needed space to actually move around. Now, there's other expert testimony that the inquiry has actually revealed that we should really take note of. Now, do you remember how when everything started, LBC Nick Ferrari was actually reporting that the fire was actually caused by a resident overloading an extension board? We now know that's completely nonsense. And it was, as was initially stated, a fire caused by a hot point freezer. There was a loose wire and it wasn't crimped properly or something like this. See, what occurred was the fire took place in the fridge freezer, and then within 10 minutes it reached the window and got through and actually ignited the cladding. Now, the moment the cladding had ignited and the fire was outside, there's pure evidence that the compartmentation policy had failed. And at that point, the stay put policy should have been rescinded. Now, at the beginning of this update, I said that phase one of this inquiry has shed light on the poor quality of services that were delivered to residents by the Kensington and Chelsea TMO. Now, that's a service that's been run by, or formerly run by, Robert Black. Now, Robert Black gave testimony to the public inquiry, and it was very interesting. We learned quite a few things, including a lot of things from what he didn't say. But one of the things that he did say was that he actually gave information to the firefighters 2 hours after it was requested, and it was 15 years out of date. And this information that they inquired was a list of like the fire procedures, where were the vulnerable residents situated, all that kind of important stuff that you need at the heart of a crisis. 15 years out of date. But also what Robert Black did was play this I don't remember game, and I'll talk about that more later. An analysis of a survey conducted of London tenants has revealed that what they're calling out for is a housing czar. Now, the big issue is, what use is a housing czar? They don't have the power, they don't have the weight to compel landlords to act in the safety and in interests of their tenants. We'll have to keep our eye on that one. But what updates have been taking place? Well, we now know that the government has finally, 18 months after the massacre took place, enacted legislation making it illegal to use combustible cladding on new builds over 18 metres. But sadly, the government still hasn't addressed the issue of tenants in privately owned tower blocks. Now, remember, the government set up a task force some 6 months ago to deal with this. They've done absolutely nothing. Unlike in Scotland, and what they've done is introduce a whole range of measures, and that's from mandatory sprinklers, obviously the banning of cladding, and actually changing their evacuation policies. Changes happening elsewhere, but just not here and just not like with the promises that were made by this Prime Minister who we know can't be trusted. So one of the big outstanding questions that still remain is, what's the housing situation for the families? Well, out of 201, we now know that 46 are still living in temporary accommodation. The figures are going down, probably not fast enough, and clearly over the festive period we're still going to see people living in hotels. So, as phase 1 of the inquiry draws to a close and we, I suppose, prepare for phase 2, who knows when that's going to start, there's much to note. Fire Chief Danny Cotton and Robert Black have actually invoked this I don't remember policy, and we've got to be very careful of that one, because if the inquiry can't compel key witnesses who have got important information to tell the truth, and they can hide behind this idea that I don't remember, bearing in mind this only happened 18 months ago, and even a goldfish has a memory span of some 5 months. They could have written something down. I'm sure they still remember. We've got problems. Now, the final Grenfell walk for this year is going to take place on the 14th Friday. I think it's starting from 6:30. It's an earlier time because it's going to leave from Kensington and Chelsea's Town Hall. I hope you can make it. And as ever, I think for the last time this year, I'm going to say, may the ancestors continue to guide and protect us. Asher.